From Stockholm, this is the Northern Economy perspective, insights, clarity, the Nordic way.
Need reliable company information anywhere in the world? With company reports worldwide from InfoBroker World, you get verified business information, registered data, and financial insights about companies in over 100 countries. Perfect for due diligence, supplier checks, and international business decisions. No membership required. Order your company report online today and gain the information advantage for your business.
Good morning and welcome to the Northern Economy perspective. My name is Nora Lindholm, speaking to you from Stockholm. I'm a virtual information influencer focusing on the Nordic economies, exploring how data, innovation, and sustainability shape markets in Northern Europe and beyond. Today we look at an interesting development in the European energy transition. Electricity prices in Scandinavia are falling even as the region produces more renewable power than ever before. For international business leaders, this trend matters because the Nordic electricity system has become one of the key energy hubs of the European economy. The Nordic electricity market, covering Norway, Sweden, Finland and Denmark, produces roughly 430 to 440 terawatt hours of electricity every year. Consumption across the region is slightly lower, at around 395 terawatt hours, which means the Nordics consistently export electricity to neighboring markets. In total, the region exports roughly 35 to 40 terawatt hours annually, mainly to Germany, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. Installed generation capacity across the four countries currently totals around 115 to 120 gigawatts. Norway and Sweden each operate close to 40 gigawatts of capacity, Finland roughly 20 gigawatts, and Denmark about 15 gigawatts. Over the next decade, this capacity is expected to grow substantially as new wind projects come online across the region. What makes the Nordic electricity system unique is its energy mix. Around 50 to 60% of electricity generation comes from hydropower, mainly in Norway and Sweden. Wind power contributes roughly 20 to 25%, and this share has grown rapidly over the last decade, especially in Denmark, Finland, and northern Sweden. Nuclear power accounts for about 10% of generation, primarily in Sweden and Finland, while solar power still represents a small but growing share of roughly 1 to 3%. Altogether, more than 90% of Nordic electricity production is low carbon, making it one of the cleanest power systems in the world. However, this success is creating a new economic dynamic. When large volumes of renewable electricity enter the market at the same time, for example during windy periods or when hydropower reservoirs are full, supply can temporarily exceed demand. Because electricity must be balanced in real time, prices in wholesale markets respond immediately. This leads to what energy economists call value cannibalisation. When many wind turbines produce electricity simultaneously, the market price during those hours can drop significantly. Studies across European electricity markets show that wind farms often capture only around 55 to 60% of the average wholesale electricity price, while solar installations sometimes receive only about 45%. Across Europe, these dynamics reduced renewable power revenues by more than $14 billion in 2025 alone. The Nordic region illustrates this phenomenon particularly clearly because it combines large renewable resources with relatively small domestic markets. Take Norway as an example. The country generates roughly 157 terawatt hours of electricity annually, with nearly 90% produced from hydropower. Domestic consumption is about 140 terawatt hours, leaving a surplus that can be exported through interconnectors to continental Europe and the United Kingdom. In strong production years, Norway exports more than 20 terawatt hours of electricity, generating revenues estimated at 1 to 2 billion euros, depending on market prices. Sweden is another major electricity exporter. Total generation is around 160 terawatt hours, while domestic demand is closer to 140 terawatt hours. This allows Sweden to export significant volumes, often 30 to 40 terawatt hours per year, primarily to Finland, Denmark and Germany. Large utilities such as Vattenfall, Statkraft and Fortum dominate production across the Nordic electricity system. At the same time, Internal transmission constraints create regional price differences inside the Nordic grid. Northern Sweden and northern Norway host large wind resources, but relatively low electricity demand. When wind production is strong, electricity prices in these northern price zones can drop dramatically. Meanwhile, electricity prices in southern Scandinavia or continental Europe may remain much higher. Germany, for example, has become one of the largest importers of Nordic electricity. In recent years, Germany recorded a net electricity import balance of more than 20 terawatt-hours, with significant inflows from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Much of this imported electricity is renewable, particularly hydropower and wind energy from the Nordic region. These developments are now shifting the focus of energy policy toward a new concept: flexibility. Finland provides a particularly interesting example of how electricity systems can adapt to large shares of renewable generation. Instead of curtailing wind power when supply exceeds demand, the country has invested in technologies that absorb surplus electricity. One of the most effective solutions has been the installation of large electric boilers connected to district heating systems. By the end of 2025, Finland had installed approximately 3,000 megawatts of electric boiler capacity, allowing surplus electricity to be converted into heat for cities and industrial processes. At the same time, Finland has implemented a 100% rollout of smart electricity meters, enabling consumers to respond to hourly electricity prices. Roughly 25% of households already use dynamic tariffs, meaning energy consumption shifts automatically toward periods when renewable electricity is abundant and prices are low. Combined with battery storage, flexible hydropower and nuclear generation, including the 1.6 gigawatt Olkiluoto 3 reactor, this approach helps stabilize the electricity system and reduces extreme price volatility. Looking ahead, electricity demand in the Nordic region could increase dramatically. Several analyses suggest that total demand may double by 2050, rising from roughly 400 terawatt-hours today to as much as 800 or even 1,000 terawatt-hours. This growth will be driven by electrification of industry, hydrogen production, data centers, and new low-carbon manufacturing sectors. From Stockholm's perspective, this transformation tells an important story. Renewable energy abundance alone does not guarantee stable markets. The real economic challenge lies in managing variability through storage, flexible demand, and cross-border energy trade. The Nordic countries are now becoming a testing ground for this new phase of the energy transition. And for international business leaders, the message is clear. The future competitiveness of entire industries may depend on where flexible, low-carbon electricity is available. From Stockholm, this is Nora Lindholm. Thank you for listening to the Northern Economy Perspective, where data creates trust, and trust drives the Nordic economy. This was the Northern Economy Perspective, your insight into innovation, sustainability, and economic transformation across the Nordic markets. I'm Nora Lindholm, information influencer for InfoBroker World. You'll find more information, data links, and contact details in the show notes. This podcast is an AI-powered production by InfoBroker World, combining journalism and artificial intelligence. We also support organizations in creating AI-driven podcast formats and research concepts. Details below. Tack för att du lyssnade. Vi hörs nästa uke. Ha en riktigt fin dag.